Do you want to know how to calm down from a panic attack? Well, I can tell you because I've had them myself. My name is Nicholeen Peck, and I teach self-government to families all over the world, and we are going to be talking about panic attacks and what you can do in this video. I am known all over the world for my calmness and for my ability to control myself and teach self-government or self-control to other people. But there was a time in my life when I didn't feel quite so in control of myself, and I actually was suffering from some panic attacks due to some chemical changes that had happened because of a post-traumatic stress situation. Now, I'm not a doctor, but I can tell you what I did that worked for me at probably one of the most difficult times in my life. When I was a young girl, my mother had some chemical things that she was dealing with that led to some depression and other things, and I was so very critical of her as a young child, so confident. I know everything as a teenager, right? Right? Anyway, they all think they do, and I certainly thought I did. Well, after the birth of my fourth child, I went into shock during the birth. There were a lot of complications that happened, and following that birth and some after effects of that, some things that happened at home with my husband's health and the nursing that wasn't working right and all kinds of stuff that was going on, I ended up feeling like I had literally gone through a war. And I remember one day just sitting there on the couch in my family room, feeding the baby and feeling like, okay, I made it through all of this craziness that just happened in my life the last 2 weeks. And then I felt this wave come across my brain, and I felt my brain disconnect. And immediately I felt like the room was caving in. I felt like when I went outside that the outside was somehow more squishy than it was before, that the sky was crowding me, that there wasn't enough space, enough air. I started having panic attacks. I told myself, this isn't real, I'm okay. But I wasn't okay. In fact, for a couple of days, I was getting in the shower feeling like I was in a box that was closing in on me, even though I'd showered so many times before. What a strange sensation to feel the world around you is altered when it really hasn't. And to know something is not okay in your head. That's where I was at. Now, I got to a point where it really became bad. And I remember I called my mom. I'm not the kind of person that calls and asks for help, or at least I haven't been in the past. I called my mom. My brain was racing. Things were doing weird things to me. I was having panic attacks due to this post-traumatic stress, which I found out later. And I just said, I need help. And I couldn't even articulate it, and I hung up the phone. Immediately, my mother, who had never heard those words from her daughter, especially as an adult, came driving over to my house and burst in the door. And she looked at me and she said, I know exactly what's happening to you because I've had it happen to me too, and I'm not gonna let it happen to you. And she packed me up and she took me to the hospital. At the hospital, I met with doctors, they did some tests, and I ended up getting prescribed some medication. This was a humbling feeling for me because that medication was something that I had been very critical of my mother for. But the lucky news was because I had jumped on it quickly, I didn't have to stay on the medication for a long period of time, said the doctor, and it would only be a couple of months, and then probably things would get back to regulated the way they needed to be so that I could be healthy. Well, in the meantime, though, I needed to plan for future success. So the doctor told me, well, just because we're going to help your chemicals get regulated right now, that doesn't mean you haven't experienced trauma and that you're not going to continue to maybe have some panic attacks. So you need to make a plan for what you're going to do to handle those things. And I was like, okay, that's true. I need to make a plan. In fact, if there's one thing I have always done, it is I make a plan so that I can guide myself and direct myself toward where I want to go. In fact, that's what it means to self-govern, is to plan, this is the direction I want to go. That's my end goal. So am I getting closer? Okay, keep back on course. That's what it means to self-govern. And I had always done it. But in that moment, I wasn't even sure it was completely possible. So when I came home from the hospital, even though I wasn't fully myself, I sat down and started to make a plan. I decided that I needed to recognize all the cues, all the sensations for when my brain was going to go into this panic mode. What happened first? Was there a tingling that went up my neck? Did my shoulders start to come up? Did my eyes change? Did I not move my body the same way? I had to recognize all of it right then, because I knew that at any moment in my life, these panic attacks could come back and could get me. And I didn't want them to get me again. So I wrote down a list of every single thing, especially starting with the first few and the order that they came in, so that I could determine as soon as I feel the first one, I can tell myself what to do with it. So that's the next thing. Once you analyze what really happens, then you say, okay, next part of my plan is, as soon as I recognize one of those triggers or one of those cues, those feelings that I get inside, am I going to let it get the better of me? No. I'm going to declare the truth, because those feelings that are happening in me are chemical, they're maybe habits, they're lies though. They're not the real truth. So I have to tell myself the real truth if I'm going to choose not to entertain them. In fact, I told myself there is no reason, Nicholeen, that you cannot move any thought from your mind. You absolutely can. So I decided that if I felt those things, that I would tell myself that is a lie. What I'm feeling right now, that I'm not going to be okay, is a lie. The truth is, I can choose to let go of that thought, and I can choose to be okay. In fact, I pick to be okay right now. So in essence, I challenged those doubts that I wouldn't be okay. I challenged those thoughts of panic again and again. And I started this process immediately. I have to admit, it was a hard process to master, especially considering the fact that my chemicals were not all the way where they needed to be yet. But it made a difference. I felt empowered. In fact, once I pushed off the thought, if I felt it creeping back or the sensation creeping back, I would say, no, you don't get to stop me. I am going to live a life of purpose and happiness, and no thought is going to get in my way. I knew I had purpose, that I wasn't supposed to be stuck in this type of mindset forever. And so I pushed myself forward. I pushed myself past it. I would not be completely honest if I didn't tell you another very key factor in conquering panic attacks for me, and that is appealing to God. Now, I know not everyone is the same religion, certainly not everybody's my religion, but I knew that I'm a Christian, so I knew that Jesus Christ was light, and that light could push away any darkness. And so I called upon that power to cast out any of those feelings that I had. Every single time that I started getting just the tiniest little lie, the tiniest little inclination that things would not be okay. That was the hardest part of my life, was going through that process. But it was also probably the most empowering part of my life, because I knew God would be right with me. I knew I could ask him to be. And he would stay there and help me be strong and do the things that I needed to do. So I don't take medications anymore. That was short-lived. It was just for a few months to get my brain back aligned. It really did disconnect, like I felt it do that night I was nursing on the couch. So sometimes though, if I get too tired or my body gets too worn out, or maybe I haven't had the right kinds of food and I'm suffering a little bit from malnourishment or something, I'll start to get some weird feelings coming at me. Some chemical type change feelings. And I recognize immediately, oh, those feelings are coming. I am not going to give in to those panic type feelings. And so I immediately declare they are not true. The truth is I can be okay and that I need to go to bed. Make sure you get enough sleep. Make sure you eat right. Don't just eat sugar and bread and junk all the time. Eat good things. Eat vegetables. Eat stuff that's high nutritional value. It does make a huge difference in what your body is able to do chemically to help keep you stable. I know that everybody's situation is not going to be exactly like mine. Some people have panic attacks for different reasons. Our chemicals are all very unique to us. But there is one thing that I know. Every person possesses the power to push away a thought. Your thoughts are what are causing the panic. Your thoughts do not need to overtake you. It is possible to push them away. And the freedom and the joy and the connection to other people that are on the other side of those thoughts are so beautiful. It is worth not catering to the thoughts. Don't think about them anymore. They are lies. And it's okay to call out a lie when it's stopping you from becoming the person that you were meant to be. There are so many things that we deal with that make us feel like we can't be calm. This was just one of them. But I actually teach a whole bunch of things about calmness. And I would like for you to have a free gift. On my website, teachingselfgovernment.com, there is a free Calm Parenting Toolkit. In fact, there's a link to it in the description of this video below. Click the Calm Parenting Toolkit and get it for free right now so that you can start mastering yourself on every level. And don't give up. Those panic attacks do not have to be your companion forever. Calmness, peace, security, and connection are waiting for you if you will choose to push those thoughts away and practice that skill of doing that again and again. It is possible.